I want to bring in now former State Department Middle East negotiator Aaron David Miller and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin. Thanks so much to both of you for being here. I want to just begin on that final point as I was speaking to the IDF spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus there, Aaron David Miller, because it's not the first time we've heard Israeli officials, we're quite blaming, but coming pretty close to claiming that humanitarian groups, even an international one like UNICEF, are not telling the truth or obfuscating somehow when they speak about the dangers and the cost to civilians in Gaza. I wonder what your reaction to that point of view is. I mean, it stands to reason when 15,000 civilians are dead that Gaza is not safe for civilians.
Jim, I don't think there's any way around this. The Israelis are not intentionally killing or targeting civilians, but it's quite clear that they're prioritizing the safety of IDF soldiers over Palestinians as they seek to eradicate Hamas's military infrastructure above ground and below ground. And if Hamas is embedding its assets in areas proximate to civilian structures and communities, the IDF is obviously making the inexorable conclusion. I've been to Mawasi. If my recollection is correct, it's only about a kilometer wide and 14 kilometers long. Yeah. I'm not sure that the capacity can actually accommodate the numbers of humans who need immediate attention. So, again, I think the Israelis have they have a cruel dilemma, and if they intend to eradicate Hamas, and the next target is Khan Yunis, 400,000 folks down there, and that's maybe where the senior leadership is, and maybe the hostages as well. There's no way they're going to be able to avoid endangering Palestinian civilians.
I mean, Joel Rubin, I wonder, have they already made a decision? I mean, to Aaron, David, and by the way, there's a lot of blame to go around here. Yes, Hamas deliberately hides structures under civilian structures, hides behind people, tries to blend in with civilian crowds, etc. That said, those carrying out military action, at least in the view of Western liberal democracy, right, have a positive obligation to reduce civilian casualty. The U.S. military run into these very same issues in Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. Has the Israeli leadership effectively made the choice, to Aaron's point, that we're going to do our best, but this is a sad fact of our goal of eliminating Hamas?
Well, Jim, I think it's clear that the Israeli government is prioritizing attacking Hamas targets and understands that there will be civilian casualties and is willing to accept that cost. I think what they're trying to do is minimize it, as Aaron says, and clearly President Biden is pressuring Israel time and again to do more, and Secretary Blinken do more, protect civilian lives. But I don't think there's any question that Israel understands that in its targeting, it's going to be harming civilians and killing civilians, and that is part of the cost that it's calculating. And to the next phase as well, this is critical, right? Because what the spokesman said is that Israel is getting ready to again enter the fight in days or in weeks after this truce period ends. And so that does essentially signify that more civilians will be getting killed, and that Israel is focused on ensuring that Hamas is eradicated, and we will see more lives lost.
Perhaps many. If you're talking about 2 million people going into a size, a mile wide, a few miles long, it's just not possible to fit 2 million people safely in a space like that. And by the way, I should note that the lieutenant colonel there said, even in that space, there might be a necessity for military action. I just wondered, when you look big picture, Aaron David Miller, could one say cynically this was one of Hamas's goals? Draw Israel into a long, bloody war that isolates it in the... I mean, it's not that different from what bin Laden's stated goal of 9/11 was, right? Draw the U.S. into long, bloody wars in the Middle East, which of course he did. Now, al-Qaeda suffered a great deal, but that piece of its cynical calculation seems to be playing out before our eyes.
52 days in, I think if you stop matters here, Hamas would that strategy is clearly working. I mean, not only have they sucked the Israelis into Gaza with no prospect, I might add, of any smooth transition to any additional sort of governance. The PA is simply not credible enough, not strong enough. The Arab states are not going to put boots on the ground if it means repressing what could be an incipient or residual Hamas insurgency in the days and months ahead. An international force, I don't know who's going to sign up to send peacekeepers into Gaza. And all the while, the Israelis are trading. I mean, Hamas is trading hostages for time, and in the process, they are seeing Palestinian prisoners. They're not the most dangerous of prisoners released, but it resonates on the Palestinian street, and Hamas's popularity, certainly on the West Bank, is surging. So I think, yes, I think that Hamas is prepared to fight the Israelis to the last Palestinian. And I think that is a tragic and cruel conclusion here.
Yep. And it's listen to the way a lot of these groups operate, right? They're more than happy to see their supporters or their people die for the cause, often without asking them, right, as they do it. Joel Rubin, we are seeing these truces play out, and a truce was far from guaranteed. You had one for 4 days. Now it's been extended for 2 days. You've had some evidence, administration officials will say, that Israel has tempered its military action in Gaza, and it has. I mean, it's a fact that it has stopped that military action for a number of days. Is that evidence that by the administration pressure on Israel or influence is working?
I think it is, Jim. I think that President Biden has earned enormous credibility inside of Israel amongst its population and amongst its political elites, and certainly amongst the senior national security leadership. And it gives him and his team the ability to lean in. We have seen a variety of moments where Israel has, for example, allowed in increased truck loads of humanitarian assistance, has sought to explain its targeting more to reduce civilian casualties. I think that the way Israel is now conducting its operations, or had been up until this truce in the north, showed that it was responding to the pleas from President Biden and his team. So I think there is a story here, and I do think that the president's diplomacy has engendered results. In all honesty, it's impossible to imagine that Israel would not have responded to the October 7th attacks. And that's one of the points that there's an argument made here domestically in particular that somehow President Biden is complicit in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. That's impossible. Israel would have responded, and they would have responded most likely more aggressively and sooner if not for President Biden's intervention to try to steer this in a direction where it doesn't go off the rails. And I think that that's what he's done quite effectively.
Well, gentlemen, I'm sure we'll be talking about this more in the coming days and weeks. Aaron David Miller, Joel Rubin, thanks so much.
Thanks.